Our parents' generation, otherwise known as the baby boomers, are quite possibly the worst generation in the history of humanity. They're constantly shaming us to get a job and move out, and it's absolutely hilarious. They don't see the amazing hypocrisy in that. They're the ones who destroyed the economy and screwed up the housing market. They made it impossible to get a job and buy a house. Then they hardcore pressure and shame you for not working and not moving out. This would literally be like buying a plant, never giving it any water or sun, then yelling at it and shaming it for not growing. You should move out of your parents' house and stop playing video games. Well, here's the problem. My parents' house that you want me to move out of only cost them $50,000 to buy. Compared to salaries back then, they only had to work 4 years to be able to afford a whole friggin' house. Today, that same house costs 10 times as much, while salaries aren't that much higher, relatively speaking. In fact, I would have to work 20 years to be able to afford the same house that my parents only had to work 2 years for. But hey, maybe if I wasn't so lazy, I could learn how to magically bend time, work 240 hours a day, and close this 20-year gap, right? So, yeah, it's easy for you to say just move out and get your own place when it was literally 10 times easier for you to do so. The older generation thinks video games and technology have made us lazy. But the problem is, there's a massive hole in their logic that they don't even realize. The entire point of technology is to allow people to be lazy. Do you go to the grocery store to buy food? Well then, you're lazy. Past generations actually had to go out and hunt wild animals. Do you drive a car? Well then, you're lazy. Past generations had to walk everywhere. Have you ever taken an airplane? Well then, you're lazy. Past generations had to build an entire ship and sail for months to get to a foreign country. Did you build your own house that you live in? No? Well then, you're lazy, because the cavemen certainly had to do that. Our parents' generation thinks our generation is entitled. I don't think they even know what that word means, because if they did, they'd see that corporations and society are far more entitled than we'll ever be. Why do corporations feel like they're entitled to 40 hours a week of cheap youth labor in a world with skyrocketing inflation? If we don't make enough money, we're not entitled to buy nice things, right? So, if companies don't make enough money to pay their workers a good wage, why are they entitled to get their best efforts? If I want to have a better life, I have to work hard and earn it, right? So, if society wants me to stop playing video games and do something productive, then it too has to earn it. It's not entitled to my productivity. So, if society isn't willing to fix the economy and build a bright future for its young people, why do they think they're entitled to contributions from us? I was playing a Pokemon game as a 12-year-old kid at church when the pastor told me that Pokemon was an unholy act of sin towards God and that I should stop. This was extremely confusing. How can these fuzzy, imaginary creatures be an unholy act of sin? I asked the pastor for his logic, and his response was legit, the most brain-dead, hilarious thing I've ever heard. He said that because Pokemon evolve, this promotes the theory of evolution and denies the existence of God. And that is when I stopped going to church.
You're so entitled. The world doesn't owe you anything. Why doesn't Gen Z want to work anymore?
The next time one of your boomer parents asks you this, tell them this. The world may not owe me anything, but I don't owe the world a damn thing either. I didn't ask to be born, and I don't owe it to the world or society to sacrifice my own life and happiness just to be another cheap labor machine for them. Maybe they're the ones who are actually entitled. They're the ones who think they're entitled to 40 hours of cheap labor every week in a world with unbearable, skyrocketing living expenses, and somehow have the audacity to ask why no one wants to work anymore. Entitlement is a two-way street, and it's time we start looking at it that way.
Society, especially the older generation, really hates gamers. They're always criticizing us, telling us to quit playing video games, to grow up and do something productive. There is so much delusion and lack of self-awareness in these types of statements that I just have to expose. The reason we spend so much time playing games is because they created such a miserable, awful society that we just have to escape from sometimes. And gaming is how we do it. They're the ones who screwed up the economy, made it impossible for young people to find jobs or buy homes, and destroyed our futures with their greed. And yeah, when you screw over the next generation like that and create such a miserable, depressing world to live in, of course, we'd rather just stay at home and play video games than quote-unquote grow up and work at a miserable job where we'll never make enough money to buy anything anyways. I have a solution in mind. If they want us to stop playing video games and do something productive, they need to go out and create a better society where it's actually worth it to do something productive.